All right, tonight we have with us Bill O'Connell. And hello, Bill.
Hi, Dale. Nice to see you again. Nice to be here again.
I introduced you earlier as one of the original pain in the butts to the judiciary in New Mexico. I think that would be a safe thing to say. You've been at this a long time.
About nearly 20 years, yeah.
Fighting
20 years.
For all kinds of things, for parents' rights, children's rights, and for civil rights.
Well, since I've heard judges in New Mexico say to parents and myself that we have no rights, yeah, I think that's a good thing to fight for. I think rights are something worth fighting for.
Did you actually hear a
Absolutely.
judge say this?
I've heard Ann Cass say it on numerous occasions. I heard Robert L. Thompson say it once.
Well,
So,
I know.
yeah.
I have to admit that the opposing attorney in my original divorce decree was Christina Armijo, who's on the 10th U.S. District Court right now, and she misused the restraining order. She said, "Oh, if you do this, you're going to get custody." Now, it seems like that's the weapon of choice right now. But we wanted to talk to you about the Polentis report. I don't even know what this is. I don't even think that a lot of New Mexicans know that there was a study that was done on, was it primarily the 2nd Judicial District?
This was done in Tony Scarborough, who was then the Chief Justice in 1988, was asked by a group called Parents Against Domestic Court Abuse, or PODCA, to investigate what was going on. This was a group that actually got started before I was involved with any of this stuff.
What was their aim?
Their aim was they figured that there was something going wrong in the court system because they were being abused and mistreated, as you just heard Brenda say. They weren't following procedures, or they weren't following rules of evidence.
Well, what we're talking about here is the chief judge of the Supreme Court. He started this committee to investigate, to look into these matters for the New Mexico Supreme Court.
Correct.
I mean, this to me is unheard of. This has got to be pretty unusual.
Well,
what happened?
Very unusual. Well, nothing. Legend has it. Legend has it that Scarborough was chased off the court for doing this by the attorneys and by everybody who had a vested interest in keeping this Ponzi scheme of divorce industry going.
Well, you called it something else, about
the extortion committee.
The extortion committee?
Well, the extortion committee that chased Tony Scarborough off the court. These guys are nothing but extortion artists. This report, which was released in August 29th, 1988, addressed to Chief Justice Scarborough, very clearly states that all the things that we have been complaining about for the last 20 years are still in effect, and were in effect then. So this is a long-standing problem in New Mexico. What it in part reveals is like one of the reasons why the founders decided to leave the comfort of the realm of England was because they were transferring wealth to England, or sending money over to England, not getting governance.
This report actually talks about the transfer of wealth, but before we mention some of the details of this report, really, I don't care what you're watching, you got to listen to this show. This is an actual report from J.T. Polentis law firm. It was done because the chief judge of New Mexico requested it. But I just wanted to mention, they've been telling me to mention that tonight we are taking phone calls.
Okay,
this is the first night that we're taking phone calls. The number to reach us is 346-1633. Now, what does this report say? You're telling us that some of the problems that we are expressing as parents and maybe children are expressing, there's truth to it?
Absolutely. The findings of this report echo or precede what many of us are complaining about now. It talks about money. It talks about the length of cases, especially where children are involved. It talks about the emotional distress it puts in.
What does it recommend as far as? I know that sometimes you get these cases like in Brenda's situation where they're dragged on for a long period of time.
It talks about that. As a matter of fact, their prime conclusion is that it says, quote, "In conclusion, a speedy, less expensive trial of all issues should be the goal of the court and the litigants."
You know, one of the appeals that I had that you know about involved a domestic relations hearing officer, and believe it or not, a wise person. You're familiar with this.
I'm very familiar
wise
with this.
person totally took away all of my time with my children. And does this report mention anything about those kinds of people?
Yeah, it does. It talks about the dependence on the courts. It says right here, in the following statutory procedures, which they don't follow anymore, we noted that in instances under the Domestic Relations Mediation Act, the court relied too heavily on the evaluation. And that's their quotes, not mine. Here many litigants objected to what they described as burdensome costs, especially for psychological testing. Many complainants stated that the court appeared to accept the assessment submitted without considering trial elicited testimony, which is part of the thing I pointed out a couple of weeks ago when I read from some court orders that say they don't follow rules of procedure or rules of evidence.
Well, if you don't follow the rules, I mean, how do you know what rules you're following if the court should be the guardian of those rules?
The court should be the protector of the rules and in effect the overseer of the rules. The problem is when you don't use rules of procedure or rules of evidence, you have anarchy in the system, and a lawyer can lie their butts off, and lawyers do lie their butts off.
Well, you know, it's
and you don't even have to put the litigant on the stand because they regard lawyers' remarks as evidence, which is completely unconstitutional, because the lawyers have had nothing to do. Lawyers can't present evidence.
How did the lawyer know anything about this?
Well, because it doesn't matter how they knew anything about it. They're just spouting rumor. That's what they do.
That's hearsay, right?
And it's hearsay, and without that's because they don't follow rules of evidence.
Well, what about
throwing the rules of evidence out?
An example of that was Brenda, who had a psychologist that did a report, and she was not allowed to present that. Now, that's an example of. I had
an evaluator appointed by the court, a well-respected guy, one of the top 3 or 4 respected guys in the county, and of course, and he wrote it, and it came down not necessarily in anybody's favor. It was just, you know, hey, these are just 2 people with problems with each other and not anything else. And of course, they didn't like that, so they just got rid of it, and you know, it cost somewhere around $10,000 to get it done, and it was, you know, the court treated it as if it was ripped up paper.
So what they're talking about here is that the other people, not the judge, are making judicial decisions.
Well, that's
given judicial authority, or is that another issue?
You see, and that's what they're doing in kind of like the court clinic. When, you know, the court clinic, I don't know, that's such
like
an
the
obscene.
Advisory council.
Well,
consultant?
the court clinic, they assign parents and children to be evaluated in this court clinic, which are employees of the court. That is an obscene.
It's a conflict of interest. Right.
An obscene conflict of interest. So they've got a whole little industry wrapped up in the courthouse, which is impenetrable by law, because law doesn't exist in the courthouse. Every judge has his own little fiefdom in every courtroom.
Well, you heard also that many times that if an expert, I don't understand how they get around this now. You know, HIPAA law says that you are the one that are in charge of your own medical records. If somebody does a psychology evaluation on you, how can the court keep that from you, and how can they violate federal law?
Well, they violate federal law all the time, as you well know in your case with the domestic relations hearing officer law. But anyway, let me talk a little bit about the money stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about this.
This is really where it gets to be interesting, and I'm going to go on here a little bit more about the evaluation, but there's a couple of things we should talk about.